please wait for the raffle, and hopefully we will have a winner soon. So now I would like to invite my co-moderator for today's evening, Aisha, to take this program forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manish. After listening to the menu selection, I'm guessing all of you really want to push through this very quickly, but I'm going to tell you that the session we're now going to have is really spectacular and what something you've been waiting for. Everything we've discussed here, it's very important to understand the political connotations of what we're doing, particularly the media landscape. And for that, we have a very special guest. We have Amna Nawaz. She's an Emmy and Peabody award-winning journalist, currently co-anchoring PBS NewsHour, and is the first Muslim-American woman to lead a national newscast in the US. Although I'm still reading her bio, but that in itself requires an applause. She's born to Pakistani parents in Virginia. She studied at the University of Pennsylvania and the London School of Economics and began her journalism career at the ABC and NBC, reporting internationally from conflict zones and covering major global stories. Nawaz has moderated, as most of you have seen, the US presidential debate, produced and acclaimed documentaries and podcasts, and is recognized for impactful reporting on politics, justice, and social issues. I'm going to let Aisha Tanzim have a deep conversation with her. Aisha Tanzim is also an acclaimed journalist. May I please invite these two wonderful women on stage to have a discussion, which is our keynote discussion.
Hello, everyone. Are we having fun? Or are we having fun? Yeah? Come on, young guys. You guys are having fun, right? Okay, so just for context, even though Amna's amazing by herself, but just to let you know, journalism in US is right up there, like just a notch behind Hollywood when it comes to competitiveness. So when we say Amna Nawaz has made it, what we're saying is we have our own Angelina Jolie in house.
There you go. Thank you. First of all, no one has ever uttered those two names in the same sentence together, so thank you for that.
Wow. So, Amna, you started your journalism career right after 9/11. How did being a Pakistani American feature at that time in your career?
Yeah, I talk about this a lot. I say today that I would not be a journalist were it not for that day. Before we dive into the more serious stuff, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone here for having me here, to Tariq for the very warm invitation. What an honor it is to be sitting alongside such an incredible and esteemed journalist in her own right. Please, if you have not seen her work, it's amazing. I also want to say, when I'm invited to a conference about entrepreneurs, I was like, these are not my people. I'm honored, I'm surprised, but then I saw how much applause that Nehari and Helva got, and I was like, wait, these are my people. So I'm in the right room. I graduated college in 2001. I had a degree in politics, philosophy, and economics, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. Every parent's dream, basically. And I started a one-year internship. I'd taken my LSATs, I'd gotten into law school, and I said, I don't want to sit in a classroom for a few more years. So I made a deal with my parents where I said, let me just get a year of experience. Let me do a fellowship somewhere or teach for America. Let me kind of live a life. And then I'll go to law school. And I had a one-year fellowship at ABC News at Nightline, which was then anchored by Ted Koppel. And that began in August of 2001. And I am a big believer in the idea that where you find yourself is exactly where you're supposed to be, and sort of leaning into that. And literally 3 weeks into my very first professional experience, the entire world changed. And my place in that world changed. First generation American, visible minority, Muslim American, and suddenly I was the subject of a lot of people's scrutiny and anger and questions. And I think everyone in this sort of knows that moment and remembers what it felt like. And I leaned into it. I just said, okay, this is where I am, this is where I'm supposed to be. I saw the best people in the business do the absolute best work. It was just a moment that it really defined for me what it is to do mission-driven work and what it is to lean into who you are and try to use that in the moment for some kind of good. And so I never left. I never went to law school, much to my parents' disappointment. I think they're okay with it now. But I became a journalist that day, and I've stayed one ever since.
At one point, you returned to your roots, so to speak. You became a correspondent in Islamabad. What was that like?
It was interesting in ways that I didn't even anticipate, because it wasn't something I'd set out to do. I always saw journalism as a way to connect people and connect cultures and kind of make the space between people a little smaller, because like many of you, and probably in the way that you've raised many of your children, my parents took us all over the world when we were growing up. We were always taught that our boundaries are only as far as we will allow them to be defined. And so we're American. We're very American culturally. Like all my Pakistani cousins agree, I'm very American. But we traveled all the time. We lived for every summer in Pakistan. We traveled to India and Turkey and Russia and Latin America. And for me, journalism was like, okay, this is something I can do that will help people understand a lot of these places I've spent a lot of time. When the job came up to be the Islamabad bureau chief, it was at a time of real tension between the
Upheaval.
Yeah, and Pakistan was trying to figure out how to manage its own sort of internal terrorism issue, and the war in Afghanistan was raging on, and I covered the war a number of times.
Were you there when the NATO supply lines were blocked, that period of really extreme tension? Weren't you there?
I was. I began going in the 2000s. I did my first military embeds in like the mid-2000s, and then I took over as bureau chief in 2011, right after the Bin Laden raid.
Yes.
So,
The lowest point.
yes, and it was for me an incredible professional challenge. There were so many stories to tell, but it was also very satisfying personally, because I got to experience the country in a way that I never had growing up. You know, it wasn't just about going to see my cousins and hanging out with friends and family. I saw so much of that country in a lot more ways than my parents had even seen growing up.
And funny enough, I grew up in Lahore, and I saw more of Pakistan when I went back as a correspondent.
That's right.
You know, because you don't get to, women in general don't get to travel that much in Pakistan otherwise.
Right.
Is there a particular story in Pakistan that you still remember and say, I should have done it. I really want to do that.
Oh, there's thousands. I mean, this is the problem with any journalist, right? Is everywhere you look, there's a story. And so the challenge just becomes, where can I funnel the resources and energy and actually get these across the finish line? There are hundreds and hundreds of stories that I wish that I got to do. But I'm most proud, I think, of a couple of stories. One was when Sharmina Obaid-Chinoy was nominated for an Oscar, and no one in America knew who she was. And I was like, people will know her name. And so I did a profile of her for the Today Show on NBC. And it was not my usual fare, you know, I'm not usually doing morning television, but it was a chance for this audience, for millions of Americans to see, this is what it means to be a woman in Pakistan. This is what it means to be incredibly accomplished and living this life here, and to sort of open that window for a lot of people when they had a very specific idea about what it meant to be a woman in Pakistan. Was very exciting for me. And the other story that I did had to do with a young girl named Gulpikai, who I will never forget, because she was going to school for the first time in Attock. And her family were Afghan refugees, and she'd only ever known a life living in Attock. And it was the first chance she ever got to go to school. And she was 10 years old. And she attacked school every day as if it was going to save her life, because really it was. It was the only thing standing between her and a life that I think we can all imagine had she not had access to that. And I stayed in touch with her family for years and years after that. And honestly, I still think to this day about whatever became of Gulpikai, because there's so many young women like her.
Let's talk about some of your challenges in that region, or in general, if there's another challenge that you want to talk about. What do you think was the hardest part of your job there, or anywhere? What are some of your biggest challenges?
Of doing the job in Pakistan?
Yes.
You know, I'd say it's a good advantage having the background that I have, being able to speak Urdu, being able to blend when I walk out in the streets to some degree. There were probably more times that I found myself to be the only woman in the room in Pakistan than anywhere else, any other country I've covered. And there's a certain culture, as we all know, that comes with that. There's men that won't shake your hand when they meet you. There's people in positions of power who won't be in contact with you one-on-one in a way that you need to develop sources as a journalist. And there's sort of an assumption that as a single woman wandering around Pakistan on your own, that something must be wrong with you. Because
Yes.
why would any person choose to do this?
Or you're a villain. That's a very common perception.
So I actually, before I wasn't married when I took the job, I wore a wedding ring just to keep people away and lied, because that was easier. And I think that was probably the most difficult part, but honestly, it didn't get in the way of the work.
I'll tell you, I faced it, I'm sure you have to, the single most, and I've been undercover to Daesh areas and all of that, and people think that must be really hard. No, the single most difficult part, I had to plan when to use the washroom. I had to plan my day around how many hours I would not be able to go because there were no female washrooms or restrooms in vast parts of Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Yeah. That's probably, I probably blocked that out of my memory because it was so traumatic at the time, but you're right, that's very real.
Let's talk about your life. Journalism is not a 9-to-5 job, has never been. It's a 24/7, you wake up in the middle of the night, you get called on weekends. How do you balance your work life and your home life, your kids, your family?
Very poorly, I think that is the short answer. Well, this is an opportunity for me to shout out the most important member of our family who's not here tonight, he's out of town, but my husband Paul is just the best decision I've ever made in my entire life, and a real partner to me in every sense of the word, and an incredible father to our two daughters, Gara and Lena, who are 11 and 9. And it just wouldn't work without him, because as you say, there's no hours around this job. You get a call at 3 in the morning that you need to be on a plane in 2 hours and you go. Or something terrible happens in some corner of the country or some distant part of the world and you just have to go.
Or you plan that birthday party, or you plan that anniversary, or it's your kid's recital or something.
So you know, the day my Lily turned 5 was the day they called the 2020 election. And I rushed through that morning and I baked her the Oreo cake that I promised her I would make her, and I quickly wrapped all the presents and I called all my family and I said, you gotta get over here now because I have to go. And luckily we have a lot of friends in the family who are close to us and they all rushed over and had like a big impromptu party for her. But I sang her happy birthday, I watched her blow out her candles, and then I ran into work because we had to go live.
So in this environment, journalism is facing a huge crisis. 60% of the world does not have free press. Financial insecurity is collapsing newsrooms around the world. And misinformation and disinformation, now with AI and deepfakes, is making the normal job of a journalist way more difficult. How are journalists tackling some of these challenges?
Yeah, the AI piece of it is particularly worrying because I don't think we're even a foot into what will be a mile of worries ahead. We've had tastes of it every now and again. There was a recent clip actually where someone somewhere used my voice and manipulated it to make it seem like I was saying something that I wasn't and put it over a fake video and published it. And I didn't even realize it. No one tagged me, but I was notified because a number of people recognized my voice and sent it to me. It had been viewed 7 million times by the time I caught it. And then I flagged Twitter and we sent notes to all our contacts, but it never came down. It's probably still out there for all we know. We just said this is fake, we flagged it as much as we could. And this wasn't even a serious thing. I mean, this was not, it was sort of a joke video. But someone had taken my voice and used it in that way. And the point was, as one of the experts I talked to told me, they could have used any voice. They used a credible journalist's voice to give the video credibility. really terrifies me, because you can now create from absolute nothing complete videos of people saying things of consequence and publish them, and our media literacy is so bad that people don't know if it's real or not, and trust that it's real if they see it in one of their feeds. So that part really terrifies me. As to how we're doing in response to this, I'd say very poorly. I don't think that legacy news organizations, even new media organizations, are doing half as much as we could or need to be doing in this moment. And it comes, as you say, at the same time that we are under unprecedented financial stress and threats right now. I mean, this is a time of growing worry among domestic journalists who are facing the kinds of threats and physical threats that are closer to the kind of threats that I faced when I was overseas covering war zones and covering dictatorships and other regimes. So there's a whole menu of options to be very, very worried about, but at the same time, I see a number of journalists at every single news organization who wake up every day dedicated to doing the one thing that we say we're going to do every day, and that is work a little bit closer to the truth. And I think if anything is going to get us through, it's that idea, that every day you wake up and you do that.
So in this environment, when journalism, newsrooms are collapsing around the world, salaries are collapsing around the world, and in the US, network correspondent salaries are falling. If a young woman comes to you or a man, and says, I want to be a journalist, what do you tell them?
So one thing I'll say, and this is something Paul and I have always held dear in all the decisions we made, and I should also mention Paul is a journalist, an accomplished journalist in his own right. He was at the New York Times when we were in New York before we moved down to DC. One thing we always held in our careers was we decided we were never going to make any decision based on money. And I know that may not be the advice that all of you necessarily take or even give your children, but I will say that it saved me in a number of ways, because I always knew the decision I was making was one that I could live with regardless of what happened on the back end. I wasn't tied to it for any specific reason. I could walk away from it if I needed to. And the question was always, is this a job that's good for me? Is it a job that helps me grow? Does it get me closer to whatever mission that I'm working towards? So the salary question for me, yes, the commercial networks in particular are feeling a lot of this pressure. I have the benefit of working in public media where no one goes to public media because they want to make a ton of money. And it's a larger issue of financial pressure on the industry, I think.
Yes, now the public media is facing huge pressure under this administration.
Yeah, we're facing funding cuts.
Yeah.
The Trump administration is trying to rescind the funds that Congress has already appropriated, which would be devastating for public media in this country, and in particular for the more than 300 public media stations that exist across this nation, largely in places that other commercial networks and affiliates don't set up. So they are oftentimes the only source of reliable information and local news in a lot of these communities. And that is deeply, deeply worrying.
So I have to wrap up on that. This has been a fascinating discussion, but I must ask you this question. This room is full of people who care about making money mostly, but I found out today, don't you guys, you do care about making money, right? I'm right. But today I found out, since I'm a new member, that they also care about giving. Why should they care about the condition of media here and in Pakistan?
One of the things that I've become more, certainly I've always been aware of, but I think something that I've found that most people don't necessarily make the connection to in their everyday lives is just how central a free and fair press is to the world that we live in, to this country that we all call home, to the places that we enjoy, to the work that you want to do every day. I mean, the one thing I'll say about entrepreneurs, right, which I could never be, I'm in admiration of all of you, because I think the creativeness and the innovation and the bravery that it takes to be able to weather the kind of uncertainty and bet on yourself and take the chances you do, I don't think that I can do that. I'm so grateful to all of you for the work that you do. But I think all of those exist, especially in this country, because we have a democracy. They exist because conditions allow. And I think we need to remember the conditions allow because you have journalists getting the truth out there. You have people who provide you reliable information on which you can make decisions about which way the market's going to go, which industries are going to move, or who to trust, or who not to trust. And right now, more than ever, this is one of those moments where if you don't act, if you don't support your local public media station, or the news outlet, or buy a newspaper, or whatever it is you do to choose to actually support journalism in your career, it's the kind of thing that you don't realize how much you need it until it's gone.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Guys,